Every meal you have ever eaten was made from rock. A specific rock dug out of the ground in a specific place. And that place is running out. You have never thought about it because you have never had to. The food just appears. The shelves are always full. That reliability is the most dangerous illusion of the modern world. The element is phosphorus. It is in your bones, your teeth, the DNA of every cell in your body. And it is in the fertilizer that grows almost everything you eat. Without it, plants do not grow. Full stop. Here is the fact that should keep agricultural planners awake at night. There is no substitute. You can make nitrogen fertilizer from the air. You cannot make phosphorus from anything. It has to be mined as rock, and there is only so much of it. Now the part that turns a resource into a weapon. One country holds an estimated 70% of the world's remaining phosphate rock. Not 50, not 60, 70%. Concentrated inside a single national border. That country is Morocco, and the mines are run by one state-owned company. A single company in a single country sits on top of the mineral that grows the planet's food. Remember that. The rest of the world lives hand to mouth. The United States has maybe a few decades of reserves left at current use. China has more but hoards it, taxing exports heavily to keep it home. Everyone else is a customer, and customers can be cut off. It starts, as these things do, with something that looks small. A trade dispute, a diplomatic insult over a contested desert territory, a tariff announced on a Tuesday that nobody outside the industry even notices. The price of phosphate rock ticks up, just a few percent. Buried in a commodities report no ordinary person will ever read. But farmers read it, and farmers all over the world begin to do the same quiet math, because this has happened before in miniature. In 2008, phosphate prices spiked roughly 800% in a single year. Then again in 2022. Each time the world flinched, prices eased, and everyone forgot. We keep getting the warning and filing it away. Month 1, the dispute hardens. Export quotas appear. The single company that controls most of the supply is not cut off exactly. It just slows down. A little less rock leaves the port each week. In a tight market, a little is enough. Fertilizer prices double, then double again. In farm country, this is not an abstraction. It is the single biggest cost a grower faces, and it just became unaffordable in the space of a season. So the farmer does the only thing he can. He uses less, not because the crop needs less, because he cannot afford more. Across millions of acres on every continent, fields get a fraction of the phosphorus they are hungry for. Here is the cruel physics of soil. You do not see the damage the first year. The plants draw down phosphorus banked in the ground from seasons past. The harvest looks almost normal. The problem is invisible and building. Season 2. The soil bank is drawn down. Now the shortage shows up where everyone can see it. Yields fall, not everywhere at once, not evenly, but measurably across the staple crops that feed billions. Wheat, rice, corn. A few percent less grain sounds survivable. It is not. The global food system runs on thin margins between what is grown and what is eaten. A small drop in supply produces a large jump in price. That is how commodity markets work. That is how panics start. The wealthy countries feel it as inflation. Groceries cost more. Households grumble, adjust, complain about the government. Uncomfortable, not yet dangerous. The poor countries feel it as hunger. Nations that import both their fertilizer and their food get squeezed from both ends at once. And history is brutally clear on what expensive bread does to fragile governments. Think about what that squeeze means on the ground. A farmer in a country that grows enough to eat but buys its fertilizer abroad. His costs triple, his yields fall, and the grain he does harvest is worth more sold for export than fed to his own village. The market pulls food away from the hungry toward the highest bidder, because that is the real detonator. And it is not hypothetical. The last global food price spike, in 2010 and 2011, helped light the fuse on the Arab Spring. Bread and unrest have marched together for as long as there have been cities. A government can survive many things: corruption, scandal, a lost war even. What governments rarely survive is a population that cannot afford to eat. When the price of bread breaks a household budget, politics stops being about ideas and starts being about dinner. Month 8, the first export bans, but now they are on food itself. A grain-growing nation, frightened, stops selling abroad to feed its own people first, which is rational, and which makes the shortage worse for everyone outside its borders. This is the machine that turns a shortage into a catastrophe. Each country acting sensibly for itself makes the whole system less safe. Everyone hoards. The shelves that were always full, somewhere for someone, begin to empty. Year 2. The compounding sets in. Underfed soil, a second year running. Yields sag further. Seed and fertilizer both cost a fortune. Some farmers plant less because planting a crop they cannot feed is a way to lose money faster. And the animals. A huge share of the world's grain does not feed people directly. It feeds livestock. As feed grain gets expensive, so does meat, milk, eggs. The whole pyramid of the modern diet tilts. There is a phrase soil scientists use for what is happening underground: mining the soil. It means taking out more than you put back. Living off reserves the land banked over decades. It works, right up until the day it doesn't. And no farmer can see exactly when that day arrives until it already has. In your own kitchen, it arrives slowly, then all at once. A staple you buy every week is suddenly a little dearer, then noticeably dearer. Then, one ordinary afternoon, simply not on the shelf, not sold out, just not there. You were never told any of this was fragile. Why would you be? The entire promise of modern life is that you do not have to think about where food comes from. Phosphorus is the quiet keystone under that promise. And here is the part that makes planners despair. We are not actually out of phosphorus. Not yet. The crisis is not geology. It is concentration. The supply is real, but it lives overwhelmingly in one place, controlled by one seller. That is a fragility no amount of praying for rain can fix. It is a single point of failure with a national flag on it, and the world has quietly agreed not to look directly at it. Year 3. Adaptation, uneven and painful, begins. Rich nations pour money into a technology they ignored for decades, recycling phosphorus from sewage, from manure, from the waste streams we have been flushing into the ocean this whole time. Because that is the bitter irony at the center of this. We mine a finite rock, use it once, and wash most of it out to sea. A one-way trip for the element that grows our food. We have been treating the irreplaceable as disposable. The recycling helps, slowly. It is expensive, it is partial, and it arrives years after the pain begins. The countries that can afford to close their phosphorus loop survive the squeeze. The countries that cannot do not. And the desert at the center of it all becomes the most strategically valuable ground on Earth. Not for oil, not for gold. For the gray rock that, ground up and spread on a field, is the difference between a harvest and a famine. This is the disaster with no explosion and no villain in a cave. Just chemistry, geology, and the slow math of a hungry world drawing down a resource it forgot it depended on. The average person, through all of it, never learns the word phosphorus. They know only that food got expensive, then scarce, then a source of fear. The keystone stayed invisible even as it cracked. So consider the numbers one more time. One element with no substitute. 70% of it in one country. One company at the tap. And 8 billion people who need it to eat every single day forever. We have known about this vulnerability for over a decade. Scientists named it. Reports warned of it. And the world did what it does with slow, invisible, expensive problems. It looked away and hoped. The supply has not run out. The concentration has not eased. If anything, as easier deposits elsewhere are exhausted, the world tilts further toward that single desert. The dependency deepens with every harvest. Right now, somewhere, a cargo ship is being loaded with gray rock from a Moroccan mine. It will cross an ocean, become fertilizer, become a crop, become a meal on a table you may be sitting at. A supply line most people will never see, holding up a world that assumes it always will. It sails. The rock becomes food. 8 billion people eat one more time and think nothing of it. And in the ground, the reserves grow a little smaller and a little more concentrated than the day before. The next worst case is already in motion. Be here when we walk through it.